Well, welcome to the Kristi Jones Show, where it's all about living your life to the fullest. I'm a life coach, speaker, and business owner in multifamily real estate, and I've had wild success in multifamily housing for over 25 years now. I am so passionate about helping others merge their success and lead a fulfilling life, and I bring it all together right here on this podcast. So join me and let's get started to live your life to the fullest. Hey friends, welcome back to another week here on the podcast. I don't know about you, but I am really stuffed still from Thanksgiving. I hope you had a really good Thanksgiving holiday and got to spend it exactly how you had hoped to spend that day. Honestly, the whole weekend, right? It just turns into this one big holiday weekend. But I'm ready to get back into the swing of things, bringing you a fabulous episode today on the podcast that's really going to help set you up for success in this coming year. So I'm going to be sharing with you today a segment of a masterclass that I did this year called the High Achievers Breakthrough. And I'm going to help you break free and overcome those limiting beliefs that are going to help you create your ideal life, one of success and fulfillment. So let me ask you this. Do you ever feel like there's something holding you back from achieving what for you is your ideal life? You are so not alone. I've definitely been there too. And I cover all of that in what I'm about to share with you of the segment of this masterclass. It's a very powerful first segment of this. It's like an hour and 30-minute long masterclass, but I'm giving you this front chunk of it because I know so many of us are challenged with those things that we hang on to in our head. And it really stops us or blocks us from having that success and fulfillment in our life. So it might be time for you to examine those stories that you're telling yourself, just like I did so many years ago. In this segment of this podcast of what I'm sharing from this masterclass, I share some deeply personal stories from my journey of how I had to work through some things and identify some things and what I decided my new story was going to be and how I worked through that. So it's time to stop letting those old stories define us and determine what our decisions will be from that place. So join me here in this, 30 minutes or so that we get to spend together. And I'm going to help you take that step forward in living your life fully and flourishing. We want to bring that success and fulfillment totally together for you. All right, let's dive in and get right to it. I want to talk about where you're at and you getting that breakthrough that you need. So glance at this really quickly for me. Can you see the screen okay? I think we're still good. If at any point you're not seeing something, you just need to give me a wave in the chat and say, hey, it's not showing. So glance at this really quick. Are any of these you felt like you've lost your sense of self? You've gotten off course, like you had a plan for what you wanted your life to look like. And now through circumstances, relationship changes, maybe a marriage ended, maybe you went through a divorce, maybe there's been a big health problem. Maybe there's been a business that you tried that didn't work. Do you struggle with clarity, direction on what to do? So reading through those, the 1 through 6, if you want to put in the chat, does one or several of those resonate with you? If so, I would love to know. A lot of times I find that, people will be feeling like a complete superwoman, superman in their career, but their personal life, not so much. Or they've got their personal life and their home life and their relationships, that's all going great, but they are really struggling at being able to achieve their goals in their business, in their career. So if you want to drop 1 through 6 in the chat, would love to know if any of those resonate with you. And if you've got something really outside of that, let me know too. Drop it in the chat if you're here. That's the benefit of being live, is you can give that to me and then that's what we will dive into. So here is Here's the real problem. The real problem is the number one thing that holds people back from that next level, from that next step, how to elevate their life. It is the personal growth and the personal development area. Period. Bottom line, drop the mic. That's all. I've been in business and in life now. I've been on this earth for a long time. I see this over and over again in my own life and in others, in my own life and with my clients. This is the one thing when we focus on this and we put time, energy, money, effort into personal growth and development, you will get the return on investment on that every single time in multiple areas of your life. So it affects your business, your career, your relationships, your relationship with yourself, which is so important, absolutely important. It affects your emotional resiliency, and it really affects your connection to you, to your inner self. So really quickly, as I started to rebuild my life and discovered over time this process, this is the foundations of my coaching in the Flourishing Edge. And there's 5 foundations that build into intentional living. And this truly is the way to build a life that you truly desire. This is the process that has worked for me with intentional living and the 5 foundations of that, and for my clients. But I'm going to come back to that later. But I just want you to know that there's a framework there that tie in to making that work. All right. So if you're excited about this part of it, we're going to dig into the workshop now. So what's holding you back? Have you been thinking about this at all since you've signed up for the masterclass? You know, there comes a time when we start to question what's holding us back. If that's you, drop me a wave, say yeah in the chat. Say yes, I am trying to figure that out. And it's frustrating me to death. Is this something that when you came here today, you were really hoping to uncover some things for yourself? If so, let me know in the chat. Type a 1 in the chat if you are super excited about this segment, that you're like, yeah, Kristi, I got to figure out what's holding me back. So really quickly, there's a time I had to really get clear on what was holding me back. What were my limiting beliefs? What was getting in my way? And I just tossed these photos on there because they mean absolutely nothing probably when you're looking at them. But do you ever look at a photo, you know, in your phone or, you know, in a photo album from years ago, and you can look at that and you remember exactly where you were, like how you felt, what was going on. And these are 2 for me that definitely are those pivotal moments. I was letting my mindset kind of run my life, and it was showing, and I had to reel that in very quickly. So wherever you are, we have to get clear on knowing what your limiting beliefs are. You gotta get a better grip on that. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what could be holding you back. So here's the 5. Here's the top 5. I find this over and over and over with my clients. These are the top 5. Old identity, fear, imposter syndrome, past events or traumas, and not being yourself. Do any of those, when you see that on the screen, you hear me say that, do any of those like resonate with you on the inside? You're like, yeah, I've kind of been wondering about that. Give me a number. If you have a number that's jumping out at you, just drop it in the chat. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. I'm checking a setting over here really quick. I see 1 and 3. 1 and 3. Those are good ones. I see a 2. Okay, 1 and 3, old identity, imposter syndrome. Those are the top ones, my friend. Those are old identity. This is when we have like an old story that we're telling ourselves. And for whatever reason, we are having a really hard time developing that new story. So I want to encourage you when it comes to identifying too much with the old identity, that 100% you can recreate immediately a new story for yourself. When you have the story that you're telling yourself is what is giving you your identity. That's what you're connecting to. Okay. Totally doable. On fear, someone said fear here. Fear is what's behind many of the reasons of why we don't do things, why we drag our feet, why we don't do the thing that we want to do, that we say the thing that we want to say. I mean, it's just crazy how it's so subtle, but that's what it is. It's fear. And if you don't recognize it, it will run your life. I mean, fear of making mistakes. I mean, you can't be in business. You can't be a game changer and walk around in fear all the time. So fear is a really one that we have to take control of. And imposter syndrome, man, do I get this one? Oh my gosh, I totally understand. Totally get this one. It is often we feel like a fraud. We're like, am I really meant for this? Or what's Aunt so-and-so going to think about maybe you've got a business, maybe you're changing jobs, maybe you're changing relationships. Like you walk around worrying about what everybody else is going to think, that you're an imposter. And that is so, so common. So I'm glad that both of you have put that in the chat. You already have a feeling of where you're stuck and where you're needing your breakthrough. So you need to get clarity on that. And then let's go ahead and do some work real quick. Let's do some work for a little bit so we can dive a little deeper into the areas that you feel stuck. So let me go forward and I'm going to pull up that list again. Am I going at an okay pace for you guys? Is this working for you? Let me know. Yes, no. Yes, no, yes, no. How's the pace going? Okay, I see a yes. Perfect. All right. Sometimes I love doing this, so I get moving pretty fast, and you just let me know if I need to slow down a little. I am here for you. Okay. So let's dig into this just a little more. So it was 1, 3, and 2 were the responses on the main things holding you back. So let's make sure you have your pen and all of that handy. I want you, let's see, false identity. Identity, fear, and I do not have good handwriting, just FYI, and I hope you can see this behind me, but I do this because it's just part of the brainstorming process. And imposter. So I want you to think about for a minute, let's start with the identity, the old identity. Let's start with that one. I want you to think for a minute. I just want you to write down for yourself. I want you to write down, what is it? What is the old identity that you are hanging on to? Write it down. What's coming up for you right now? What is coming up when you talk about your identity? What part of that are you stuck in? Jot some notes on that. You're more than welcome to share them with me if you choose, or you can just keep it right there on your notebook. It's whatever your comfort level is. What are you stuck in? So think about now, what is the story? Look at it like this. What is the story that you're telling yourself? Let me give you a quick example. When I talked about when I started my business, my first business when I was 32, I was started as a leasing agent in multifamily housing back when I was a single mom on government assistance. And then fast forward to the age of, I was at 26. Fast forward to 32, I was stepping out to start my own business. And an old identity I had, I was, at times as I got closer to starting that, I was pretty scared. Plus, when I went to go give my notice, I poured everything I had into that job that I had, because that is what got me out of government assistance. I was able to latch onto something and start making a difference for myself and my son. And I gave everything to that company and to that job. And so when I started to go out on my own and I went to talk to the CEO and give my notice of about 30 days or so, it was brutal. He was told me how I was going to fail. I was going to be a failure. I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I mean, it was harsh. It was on and on and on. And man, did that old story want to come up in my brain of the things that hadn't worked out in the past. Obviously, if you've had to walk through a relationship that hasn't worked out the way you had hoped, you're dealing with a lot of negative identity on that at times. So hearing those harsh words, that old story was like so fresh. And I almost let it start to take root. I had to quickly recognize that old story was kind of playing in the back of my head. I had to quickly develop a new story. Does that make sense? So be thinking about this for yourself. All right. So is this helping? Are you taking some notes? Like, is that helping you go from old story? I want you to decide, like, is anything showing up for you right now on the identity part? What is it that you want to be? Who is it? Who is that woman? Who is that man that you want to be? Who is that? Who is it that you're wanting to be? I want you to write that down on your notes. Who is that you want to be? On imposter syndrome, kind of the same thing. Decide who it is that you want to be. How do you want to show up in your business? How do you want to show up in that? Do you want a little time to explore this a little longer, or shall we move on? Type a 2 if you want to move on. And if you want some time to dig into this a little more right now, type a 1. 2 to move on, 1 to stay. I've got a move forward. Okay, well, we'll move forward. All right. Man, I am so sorry. Let me get forward to where we were. If this isn't representative of life, right? All right, this is back where we were. Thanks, you guys, for your patience. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Is this not representative of life? Like, it just throws us curveballs. I have never had that happen before in all the master classes. Whole thing just went boop, goodbye. Thank you for everyone, the behind the scenes team. Thank you guys so much for getting that going. All right, so let me get back on track where I was. All right, so identity, imposter syndrome, fear. Those things are very common. Identifying like where you're at. I shared the deal about how I had my old identity, how I had to really consciously do the work to create the new story. When I have a motivational speaking and I'm on the road, I have a talk about flipping doubt and fear into millions. Literally everything about that And that particular story I share has to do with the story you tell yourself, the identity. That can give you, when you can make that shift in your old identity to your new identity, it is like Katie bar the door. It is, things are going to happen. It is unreal what can change in your life. I say that because I'm living proof of it, and my clients experience it as well. I'm going to tell you about a client later on, and her story is amazing. So when I finally got my breakthrough in my limiting beliefs, in the crap that's holding me back, that's when my life went to the next level. We formed another management company, another development company. We were building apartments, grew our portfolio to over, 500 million. It really took the right mindset. It took releasing the old identity. It took stopping the imposter syndrome that I was carrying around like crazy. And the fear, like, can't be scared of making mistakes, because we're going to make mistakes, period. That's just how life is. We learn through those mistakes. My life looked entirely different once I was able to identify what was holding me back. And I know that's the case for you too, because the people that have signed up for this, you're like right on that verge. You are so self-aware that there is something in your way, and you are willing and you have the courage to uncover that, to do the work. So here's the takeaways on limiting beliefs: becoming aware of what's hindering your process. Do not worry about the opinions of others. Please do not waste time on that. Know that it's going to be uncomfortable. Get a really good relationship with being uncomfortable. If I would love to send anything home, it'd be that. There is so much in the space of being uncomfortable. And to build the life that you really desire, you have to constantly be willing to put yourself in discomfort. And absolutely, you can't have fear of failure. The biggest thing, and let me know if maybe you know somebody like this, that as they move through life and then later in life, they have so many regrets. And their regrets aren't on what they've done. Their regrets are on what they didn't try or attempt to do. Have you ever known anyone like that? Or is that maybe that's something that you get concerned about for yourself? So I want you to take those key points. I want you to take that. I want you to just embed that in your mind today. Ask yourself, what would living your life feel like without these limiting beliefs that you're dragging around? What would it feel like? Think right now, put right down on your piece of paper. What would it feel like if I wasn't thinking I was an imposter? How would I show up in my life? When I wake up in the morning, what would be the first thought that I had? If I was her, how would I feel? How would I move through my day? I want you to start creating that mental image of who she is. Who is she? How does she move through her day? What does she read? What does she do in the course of a week? What kind of clothes? Get really specific. This comes down to visualization. I teach a whole separate thing on that, but top performers have the visualization process down. We have to see it in our mind's eye before it actually happens. So get very specific. How does she dress? What does she talk about? What does she read? So what would it feel like to live your life without the imposter syndrome, without the feelings of fear, without the old identity? Think about that. Type a 1 in the chat if you feel like you can visualize that. Let me know. Can you visualize that? iPad 47 says yes. I love it. iPad 47 says, heck yeah. I hear it. So I want you to truly visualize what that feels like. Take a moment to think about what your life would feel like if you could do that. It's really, excuse me, it's really important. I want to toss this in right now just because it came to me. And I feel like when I get moved to share something, it's because I need to say it. I want to say, and I want to share with you that our thoughts and our feelings are the driving force of our experience. It is really, really important for you to understand the power of your own thoughts. Understand the power of your own thoughts. So we have circumstances. I'm going to dive into this a little bit later, but we have circumstances and then we have a thought about the circumstance. And our thoughts are what generate our feelings. And then we're human, right? So we make choices and a lot of decisions, a lot of times based on how we feel. So then how we end up with the result that we get is circumstance, the connection between circumstance, thoughts, feelings, actions, which gives you a result. So think about that for a minute. So we've talked about what's holding you back. We've talked about what's driving you crazy, right? We've talked about that. I've shared the importance of that and how that's holding you back from literally anything that you're wanting to go next level in your life. I want to thank you for tuning in today to the podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed the conversation and all the info that's been shared today. And I hope you've come away with a few ideas on how to make the most out of it for your life. If you loved this episode, be sure to share it with your friends and family. And also make sure you subscribe to the podcast and tap that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Also, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would leave a podcast review. So until next time, my friend, keep flourishing and thriving and live your life to the